iHeartSEC. I'm your host, Joe Bombo. Make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Bombo ENT Group. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, most importantly. And I appreciate all the comments. Please leave comments. I love to engage in these conversations. And there's definitely was a lot of debate and back and forth about this weekend that we just passed. That will be October 4th. And those matchups, we'll dig into that here in a bit. But if you want to leave a comment and you don't have anything to say, this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Just leave boobies. That'll be the comment for today, boobies. You know, so we can have our little kiki or whatsoever. Leave whatever you like. If you don't have anything to say, just support the boobies at this point in time. This is the month. This is the year. This is the time to recognize I love my women. And I got the pink blazer on for that. Let's get into the game notes, though. Alabama, Vandy. Ty Simpson continues to step his game up week after week. Not only becoming consistent as this season progresses, but delivering and playing the closest thing to perfect in this era of college football. Posting a 92 grade according to Pro Football Focus and being the legitimate field general for this offense. And I'm not the one who's taking notice. Former Alabama quarterback Greg McElroy echoed those same sentiments on his own podcast, Always College Football.
At the heart of their resurgence after the disappointment of week one has been the play of their quarterback. He's rapidly ascending into the top tier of the college quarterbacks in the country. He's rapidly ascending up the Heisman Trophy conversation and against a really solid defense. Now, I don't think anyone's going to look at Vandy and say, oh, well, they're the 85 Bears. They're not the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're not the Miami Hurricanes. It's a really solid defense that forces you to earn it. I thought Ty Simpson did a great job. He was 23 of 30 for 340 and a couple touchdowns. This was his third game in the last four where his completion percentage was above 75%. And if you look at how he's attacking, he'd been attacking the middle of the field. Now he's attacking the outside parts of the field as well.
I would arguably say the best quarterback in the SEC, with Marcel Reed coming in behind him and Diego Pavia, who took a few steps back following a few mistakes he made over the weekend. And you seen Simpson, he made some mistakes as well. And it showed he is a mortal man. But Vandy seemed to be ready early in this game with the big breakout run by Cedric Alexander. But only 4 carries in a game for Alexander. 4 carries? He had 65 yards on 1 run. And you're only going to give him the ball 3 more times? I'm struggling to figure out the thought process behind that. Even if Alabama was bottling up the run, I need more than 3 more attempts from my guy who seemed to have it going. So I don't know what the reason was. He didn't seem injured. He played the whole game. For 4 carries, guys? Coach Lee, we need an answer for that. That should not be the case. And I'm of the belief, though, that if these teams were yoked equally, talent-wise, Vandy would have won this game. They were outmatched, talent-wise, in certain position groups, specifically on the defensive side. The defensive line, they were outmatched. They could not compete against this Alabama front. Both teams did a great job, though, on creating 3rd and longs defensively, but Bama was better at converting those, and that led to long second half drives.
And to be honest, Vandy coming out in the second half and not being able to score points, having a couple 3 and outs and giving them the ball so much, time of possession for Alabama versus Vandy in the second half was atrocious if you're a Vandy fan. But listen, this is still a good football team in Vandy. It's a trending forward Alabama team.
Vandy did have some key penalties that stunted the growth of some of their drives, and we have to point that out. Not penalized like weeks before and weeks in the past that we spoke of, but errors in significant moments of the game. Like after the huge interception that Pavia gave to Keon Sapp. Alabama goes down, kicks a field goal to go up 23-14. On the following kickoff, there's a personal foul on that kickoff that was behind the play, may I add, that brings the ball from the 50-yard line back to inside the 10. Pavia short hops one of his receivers on 3rd and 5, throws an interception on the following play, only to be brought back by defensive holding. After being gifted the first down, they commit another personal foul penalty, and this is at the 2:30-minute mark, down by 9 in the 4th quarter. That drive consisted of 12 plays for 14 yards and ended on 3 straight incompletions after a sack on first down. Even if you only get 12 yards and that ball stays on the 50-yard line, the approach is totally different. You're possibly looking to kick a field goal. You're possibly running different plays. That's the impact that penalties can have when you're in discipline. Pavia finished the game going 3 of 13 passing. Georgia, Kentucky. Georgia needs to understand that their identity will be based off Gunnar Stockton. They need to become more fluid in their offense from year to year. Yeah, they want to lean on the run game, but sometimes the running backs just aren't going to do it. Chauncey Bowen looking better. Frazier, obviously he's dealing with some injuries. And I got to say, I watched the SEC Network, the Sky Cam, and I love that. They need that more often. That view shows you a lot of things you don't see. And you can see, it seemed like after every run, when Frazier was getting up off the ground, he had a limp, he had a gimp. So that's something that we're going to have to monitor as this season goes forward. But Bowen isn't the guy that's going to get you the home runs, the big plays. And if you don't have that Todd Gurley, Nick Chubb, James Cook type of guy that can hit their head on the goalpost for Georgia, you're going to struggle. And it's quite evident that they don't have that guy right now.
Georgia, they beat Kentucky 35-14, handled their business, did everything that they needed to do. We know that Georgia has some flaws. There's no doubt. We also know that they are potent and that they could beat anybody. There's no doubt about that as well.
And it seems to be the ongoing narrative around Georgia. Some of us can just be too slow to let go. We talk about the Bulldogs in this matter-of-fact tone. And yes, they've warranted this from their past. But we should learn early in the day of NIL, rosters can go stale with continuity. Ask Clemson. Not all players pan out. But there seems to be this unwritten rule that Georgia is going to be automatically in a mix. And quite honestly, I'm not believing that quite yet.
Georgia got a really solid 35-14 win over Kentucky. Hey, bounced back in a big way, obviously keep their SEC hopes alive. Particularly impressive was how they handled some of the shots downfield. That was a huge problem. Remember, against Tennessee, they were giving up countless shots. Just big plays, big plays, big plays. Well, Kentucky obviously recognized that. They said, all right, we got to take some shots. Let's do it. Well, their quarterback, Cutter Boley, on his deep balls, he went 0 for 10 on throws that traveled 20 yards downfield or more. That's the most attempts without a completion by an FBS quarterback this year. And the Bulldogs now, they have not allowed a single completion thrown 20-plus yards downfield in the last 2 games after struggling against the deep ball earlier this season. So one thing that was challenging for Georgia early on is now something that they are keenly aware of, and they're doing a better job defending it.
I'll give them credit. Coming into this game, they did get better in one area. But that wasn't pass defense. See, Alabama doesn't take as many shots down the field as a team like Tennessee does. Bama beats you from 20 yards within. And Cutter Boley, he couldn't beat his way out of a wet paper bag Saturday. Nonetheless, beat this Bulldogs defense. So I want to put this into context on some of these statements because Boley was really timid throughout that game. But the Bulldogs' goal line offense seen significant improvement, and I cannot deny that at all, result-wise. And that's a plus. And like we spoke about, Kobe Young a few weeks ago, last week, it was all Dylan Bell. And it makes you wonder, as this team gets better and you see they start to do things, and let's see if they get themselves into the positive trajectory where this offense and defense are coming together and winning games completely. But I have to ask, are stars beginning to emerge within the hedges? We seen Kobe Young a couple weeks ago. Now we're seeing Dylan Bell. The running backs are seen to maybe get going, but if they can get all these offensive pieces together, then we can start having these conversations. But until then, the jury's still out for Georgia, if you ask me. Texas A&M, Mississippi State. Highest graded player was Cashius Howell with an 85.1. This was a slop fest early on. Neither team was able to gain a way. But as the game progressed, the Aggies found a way through the running game, just like last week. And that brought me to Tennessee game, where Mississippi State was able to move the ball with ease. And I cannot take this Tennessee team serious until their defense tightens up. And that's the conversation that I will address. All this conversation about being top 5, top 10, I have to see that within the defense. Is it Mississippi State's offense or the Vols defense? Because that was 2 out of 3 weeks that Tennessee has gave up 30-plus points. They gave up a 30-piece. 2 out of 3 weeks. Hell, they were 6 points short of that versus UAB last week. So, yes, Hell State is improved. But I believe they won the game that they were supposed to win so far in the season. Yeah, you can argue Arizona State might not have been a game that we gave Mississippi State, but I'll give it to them. But this is an A&M team that we seen locked down defensively for 2 weeks straight. Win a shootout versus Notre Dame. Done it every single way so far within the season.
But I thought A&M played extremely well today. Hey, Johnny, you know what? I wasn't going to agree with you. I was like, man, Johnny being a homer. When it's all said and done, A&M might be down there. They might have something to say. They might be like the devil going down to Georgia.
What I said last week, which was exactly this. From what we have seen from A&M so far, if you give it an honest assessment from a full team football perspective, you have seen the right pieces from an offensive standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, and from a special team standpoint. You got a receiving core that could be as good as anybody in the country. You got a ground game that can pop off 300 in your face. And when you run the ball like that, like you said, Unc, your defense is fresh. I want my dogs on the D-line who are going to get drafted in that first, second, third round. If they're fresh and sitting on the sideline over there on the cool benches, having the water, and they get to go pin their ears back for 3 plays and get off the field, that is a recipe for success. So, to not jinx my Aggies by hyping them up too much, because we have a history, but nevertheless, there's one way to change, and that is do something different. And what we're seeing right now, so far, week in and week out, is very impressive.
And I cannot disagree with that. All of that. The one questionable piece I had was the defense of A&M. And they're all locked in. 1 of 10 on third downs, holding this dynamic backfield we spoke of to 2.5 yards per carry.
The defense has been outstanding. 2 straight weeks of great defense. In fact, on third down, the most critical snap on defense. The last 2 weeks combined, A&M's defense is 1-23. I should put that the other way. The opposing offense is 1 for the last 23. So they've stopped 22 of the last 23 third down opportunities of the opposition in league play. That's really difficult to do. So they're playing great. And I think that A&M at this point is a team that could probably beat anybody else in the SEC.
Florida, Texas. Highest graded player for Florida, Tyreek Sapp at an 87.1. And of course, that freshman phenom in Dallas Wilson at 81.5. Coming in this season, some compared him to this year's Jeremiah Smith. And of course, we all smirked at that and turned our nose up to it. But that first performance, the thickness of him, the way he's got the speed and is able to manhandle defensive backs, man. This kid might be something. He just might be something. Arch Manning, though. 59.7 grade. There are going to be some to say this loss wasn't on Arch Manning. Arch Manning is not to blame for this. We don't have to cast aspersions to show you where they lack. Yes, the offensive line didn't perform well, but neither did Arch Manning. Women lie. Men lie. Hey, but those Pro Football Focus numbers don't lie. Texas, only with 6 pressures on Lagway. He played from a fairly clean pocket and executed, which I wanted to see. How would he play from a clean pocket? How would he set his feet, deliver the ball downfield? Florida put Manning under pressure on 25 dropbacks versus only 6 dropbacks for Lagway. Florida's game plan was quite superb. Florida could have done some things better, but they got Texas out of their game, made Arch Manning have to beat them down the field, and he wasn't able to do that. And some things he will need to clean up.
If they're to get back in contention and have any chance at winning, let alone just throughout the season, as opposed to even thinking about getting to the playoffs, they have to have better quarterback play. They got to have better quarterback play. You got to see the field a little bit better. You got to understand what you're seeing, being able to process defenses before they happen. I'm no disrespect. I'm just saying in general, your quarterback play is one of the reasons why you're in the situation you're in now. Now, despite what all the analysts say, all the people say, and with the praises and how you're supposed to be, he's going to need a year like this. He's going to need a year like this with some bumps and bruises and grinding and getting familiar with what's going on this year. And I'm assuming maybe next year he will come back much better, having a year under his belt to get familiar with the speed of the game, being able to process things a little faster and know what's coming and knowing some of the nuances and what you can and can't do as far as taking chances with the ball.
If this team is going to advance, because right now we're looking at a 10.5 number that might not be obtainable. The running game was non-existent. But Florida's defense, that defensive line, was the strong point coming into this year. And I knew it. I knew that this defensive line would be able to keep Manning buckled up and strapped down. The thing is, when you play 3 games against cupcakes and you think that you'll just glide into this SEC schedule against one of the top defensive lines in the nation, you're going to be figuring it out on the fly. And unfortunately, the time it took to figure it out should have been spent competing. That's how it's gone. That's how it's gone. And hopefully teams will learn when scheduling, like Penn State, that, bro, you have to put those feet to the fire and be tested before you get the conference play. Because about the time the Longhorns hit the swamp, they had a false sense of confidence. You can't just backpedal in off 3 FCS opponents. And at this point in time, can we even talk playoffs with Texas?
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game. Another game.
Ball was ripping off big game after big game, and it took me back to when I asked after week 1, was this Texas defensive line too small? Something I noticed early on in the season. But not even just the defensive line, the whole defense looked to be outclassed.
And now we start to see like, well, that's what Florida could be. We knew their defense was pretty good. They showed that early in the year, even in losses to South Florida, even the loss to Miami, even in the loss to LSU. Like their defense hung in there and gave their team chances to win. Their offense just couldn't produce because they couldn't produce the splash play. Well, I didn't think they were going to be able to do that against Texas, and they did. And because of that, they scored 29 and won it. I thought that Texas would maybe get to 21, 24 points and that would be enough. They get to 21 and it wasn't. So the defense has a lot to answer for in this one.
Art struggled under pressure. They ran a quarterback draw on 3rd and 8 at the 40-yard line to end a half. That told me Sark doesn't quite trust his quarterback for it to be 4-down territory at that point in time. They were more content with just going in at the half where it was. And Florida didn't do anything to put the pressure on them. Napier sat on his timeouts at that point in time in the game. So they run the 3rd and 8 draw and basically just decide to punt on it, only for the ball to skip into the end zone, and they net 40 yards. Yes, it's the end of the half, but that says a lot about this offense and where they are as far as trusting Chuck Manning and where this offense will go in the ceiling for this offense this season. We can run through all my notes about how bad Texas played and how bad they were. But let's talk Florida and DJ Lagway. Vernell Brown and Dallas Wilson are a dynamic duo together, and it showed. Maybe Eugene Wilson will come on as the season progressed, but right now, these two freshmen have been the biggest impact on this offense. It makes you wonder and see, these are the things that we expected from Lagway, and I expected when I took that over 7.5 season total.
What was most impressive about this game was the way DJ Lagway played. If you take how he played there in the first 4 games and you throw it away and you were just picking things up right from where he left off at the end of 24, that was the guy we saw yesterday.
All signs seem to point to Florida being in bounce back mode. Well, they have another tough matchup this upcoming weekend against Texas A&M, and we'll dig into that later. And all they can really do at this point is take it one game at a time. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of iHeartSEC. Hope you guys enjoyed the newer variation of Game Notes, throwing in some of my constituents and getting their opinion and kind of validating some of the thoughts that we've had through the Game Notes instead of just running through the notes, kind of giving you some context from those around and packaging it all together for you. Please let me know what you think about it and if the flow's better, how we're doing it this time, and how we're doing it this way. I'm your host, Joe Bombo, and this is iHeartSEC. Until next time.